Hello, my name is Joseph Yamazaki from Florida State University. In this presentation, we present the results of a systematic review of studies on engagement in language learning. Specifically, we focused on studies conducted in the recent 20 years, and we also had a specific focus on the research methods employed by those studies and the definitions of engagement. To start, engagement was once referred to as the holy grail of learning in educational psychology, and the concept has received considerable attention in that field. Specifically in language learning too, learner action for learning such as language use and interaction is critical for language development, and thus the concept of engagement has received increasing attention in SLA and applied linguistics. This is the reason why we thought that it's a good time to conduct a systematic review for engagement research. Our systematic review had two objectives. First, we wanted to look back at the methodological characteristics of previous empirical L2 engagement research in SLA and applied linguistics. Second, we wanted to explore whether there were limitations and potential areas to clarify lingering ambiguity around fundamental definitions of L2 engagement. To better understand the nature of engagement, we listed here four central characteristics of engagement. 1. Engagement is an action. 2. Engagement is always context-dependent. 3. Engagement always has an object, such as a topic, a person, or a task. And 4. Engagement is dynamic and malleable. Scholars also posit several dimensions of engagement. The first is behavioral engagement. This refers to the amount and quality of learners' active participation in learning, such as time on task and voluntary involvement in speaking. There are several other dimensions of engagement. The second dimension is cognitive engagement. This refers to learners' mental effort and mental activity in the process of learning, such as language-related episodes and private speech. The third dimension is emotional engagement. This refers to learners' personal affective reactions as they participate in target language-related activities or tasks. This includes enjoyment and enthusiasm. The fourth dimension is social engagement. This refers to social forms of activity and involvement that are prominent in communities of language learning and use, such as turn-taking and willingness to listen to others. As we outline the characteristics and dimensions of engagement, we believe that engagement for language learning is important because of three reasons. First, engagement is a meta-construct that unites many separate lines of research, such as awareness, attention, and interaction. Second, engagement is intertwined with many other individual and situational factors such as persistence, achievement, and dropout rate. Third, we believe that engagement brings together teaching and learning perspectives. Turning now to our systematic review of language learning engagement research, we had three research questions. Number 1, what are the methodological characteristics of engagement studies in the field, including trends in study design and analytical choices? Number 2, what conceptual definitions and operationalizations of engagement are adopted in empirical reports? Number 3, what, if any, areas for improving engagement study quality are apparent? As was mentioned in the first slide, we limited our focus to published works in the recent 20 years. The figure presented in the slide shows the process of constructing the report pool. First, the report pool was constructed from a total of 21 field-specific SSCI journals. Then, by using engagement as a keyword, 351 reports were identified by screening abstracts, titles, and keywords. Subsequently, non-empirical reports and reports unrelated or tangential to language learning were excluded. As a result, 112 reports remained in the final pool. The 112 empirical reports were further differentiated. 73 of them were coded as ambiguous L2 engagement report. These had ambiguity or did not have specific information regarding how engagement was conceptualized, operationalized, and/or measured. In other words, there was a low bar concerning what forms of learner participation, behavior are indicative of engagement or engaging. 39 of them were coded as bona fide L2 engagement report. These adopted a specific definition of engagement as deliberate attention to and volitional action for language learning that is operationalized and measured through behavioral, cognitive, affective, or social indicators. Then, these reports were coded using descriptive markers such as study aim, unit of analysis, and indicators included in operational measurement. We now report the results of the systematic review. In the next couple of slides, we focus on the first research question, the methodological characteristics of engagement studies. Regarding the sample size of the studies, a similar number of studies sampled between 6 and 20 participants, 51 to 100 participants, and 101 to 500 participants. In terms of the age of the participants, studies with younger participants were the minority, and 63 studies, 56.3%, sampled either university students or adults aged 18 or older. Regarding the context of the studies, foreign and second language learning contexts accounted for 89.3%, and other research contexts were only minimally present. Regarding the instructional settings, 50% of the studies took place in conventional instructed setting, and the second most frequent setting was online, app-based, or a virtual learning environment. In terms of the participants' first language and the target second language, there was a considerable variation in the participants' first language. However, in terms of the second language, English was dominant. As was mentioned in the previous slide, in terms of the definition of engagement, 39 studies had a clear and focused definition, while 73 studies only had a generic or ambiguous definition. In terms of the operational domain of engagement, the behavioral domain was featured the most, followed by relative parity between cognitive and emotional engagements. Also, only a handful of studies explored the social domain of engagement. Regarding the research methods of the studies, the table shows that the choice of method was split across the quantitative, qualitative, and mixed methods. In terms of the approaches, cross-sectional approach was the most popular, while there were several studies that adopted a longitudinal or quasi-experimental approach. In terms of the aim of the study, 33% of them investigated engagement as an outcome, while 25.6% of them investigated engagement as a predictor. Also, 23.2% of them investigated makeup of engagement in a more descriptive way. Lastly, unit of analysis was split across the individual and the group level. Regarding data elicitation methods, the techniques most frequently adopted were surveys or questionnaires, and interviews or focus groups. Other methods, such as lesson observation, tasks, and tests, were also commonly used. In terms of analysis technique, since there was a large number of qualitative studies, qualitative coding or analysis were adopted in roughly half of the studies. It was also revealed that studies relied on descriptive statistics or conventional inferential statistics such as linear regression analysis, chi-squared tests, and t-tests. We now turn to the second research question, the operationalization of L2 engagement. In terms of the cognitive dimension, indicators such as focus, attention, and mental elaboration were used by various studies. For the behavioral dimension, indicators such as active participation, interaction or language use, and on-task behavior or task completion were used. For the emotional dimension, indicators such as enjoyment, interest, and willingness to engage were used. For the social dimension, although there were only 4 studies, factors such as sense of community or belonging were identified. Lastly, indicators such as language-related episodes or engagement with language were classified as others, since they combine multiple dimensions of L2 engagement. We now turn to a discussion to improve the quality of L2 engagement research. We start by discussing methodological issues. First, our systematic review found a positive trend that many studies included multiple measurements and complementary data sources. Going forward, we propose 4 research potentials. The first is the adoption of skill and domain-specific measures. Second is the investigation of the dynamics of engagement. The third is the adoption of implicit measures, and the fourth is the adoption of big data. Second, our systematic review also found the prevalence of group-based and cross-sectional designs. Here again, we propose 2 research potentials. First is the individual-based work, for example focusing on intra-individual variability. Second is the fine-tuning of the level of granularity by varying the agent, task, and time of the investigation. Our systematic review revealed that there was very little work on the malleability of engagement, the dynamics of its development, and re-engaging disengaged and disaffected students. However, we believe that student engagement can be changed, and here we present 2 example designs to examine the dynamic nature of engagement. The first is investigating the role of teachers, peers, and learning tasks on the development of engagement over time. The second is examining how classroom learning opportunities, assessments, and extramural interests and experiences influence learners' engagement. We now turn to operational and definitional issues. First, our systematic review found that fewer than 35% of studies featured a clear definition and/or operationalization of engagement. In addition, it was unable to ascertain which operational domain of engagement had been adopted or was the area of focus in over 15% of reports. For example, it was difficult to ascertain the target domain of preparation or sense-making. Also, only roughly 20% of the measures adopted were skill or language learning specific. Furthermore, we found that many indicators of engagement were ambiguous and fell outside the scope of the engagement construct. Just to show a few, we believe that an indicator, goal-directed behavior, is actually a combination of goal setting, a cognitive indicator, and strategic pursuit, a behavioral indicator. Another example, satisfaction and interest were typically used as indicators of emotional engagement, while also flow, a mental and emotional state that should emerge from engagement, was used as an indicator of emotional engagement. Another problem that we found in some studies was the blurred distinction between engagement and other constructs. An example is the distinction between engagement and motivation. Here we claim that engagement is the intensity and the quality of student involvement in the learning activity or environment, while motivation is the forces that energize and direct that behavior. In this slide, we point out several pedagogical implications. First, we believe that it is necessary to establish clear definitions and toolkits for assessing engagement so that practitioners can understand the multiple dimensions of engagement and how they interact with each other. Second, we believe that language pedagogy must sharpen its focus on the necessary conditions for engagement, including task characteristics, such as the appropriate level of support provided and how tasks should be sequenced. Third, we believe that use of technology might be useful to create an engaging environment. These technology include video games, CMC, and social media. Lastly, it is important to identify the disaffected learners and disengaging learning environments for the purpose of re-energizing disengaged students. To conclude, the purpose of our systematic review of L2 engagement research was to take stock of empirical work in the field and draw conclusions across the subdomains of language education. We end our presentation here by listing 3 areas to be addressed in future research. These are longitudinal and individual-based investigation, uncovering the dynamic nature of engagement, and the conceptual and definitional precision of L2 engagement. Thank you.